All right, good morning, AP Econ students. Don't worry about these folks over here. They are just joining us for today. Say hi, ladies. Yeah, Miller and Sandow, Sinclair. Go figure. Anyway, actually, Miller's quietly working. Go figure. First off, good morning. I don't have time with you in class today because we have the rally for safety. So I'm going to show you a couple things. I'm going to lecture one. I'm going to go over the assignments we would have done in the class, and then kind of cue you on how to prepare for the quiz on mods 3 and 4 on Monday. So first thing I want to share with you is this right here. Let's do. Nope, that's not what I want to share with you. Stop share. Hold on, let me figure this out. Why is it not working? There we go. First thing I'd like to share with you is this document here. This is the cell phone accountability chart. Basically what you will do each day is you will come into class, insert your cell phone into the cell phone caddy, and then this here, you'll put your name. This is for the month of January, and you'll just put an X in the box for each day that you have put your cell phone in the caddy. There'll be extra credit awarded to a participation column. You don't have to put your cell phone in the caddy, but if you don't, and I see it, it will be a big problem. So I would take advantage of the points opportunity to keep it in the caddy for credit rather than in your pocket for no credit. Okay. All right. So share. All right. Next thing I'd like to do with you guys is to basically get started on the lecture. It's on mod 4, comparative versus absolute advantage. And so here's the lecture for today. You guys can maybe just do your XC as we go, since you won't have done them yet, most likely. So why nations trade? Again, every nation either has a comparative and or an absolute advantage in what they produce. We as Americans are able to produce pretty much everything, or would be able to produce everything cheaper and more efficiently, but we don't. We produce what we produce well, like tech things, Silicon Valley, think that, some industrial type stuff, and we let nations like China produce our t-shirts for us. So that's what this is generally about. So let's begin. Here we go. Please also cue into this video. It's worth watching. Talks about a little bit of trade. A good thing to check out. So take a minute, pause if you'd like, and watch that video. So here we go. So why nations trade? If there's a product or good you absolutely have to have, what would that be? Instead of that, what would happen if you couldn't get it? For example, I need coffee, probably that amount. What would my standard of living be if I was not able to produce that coffee for myself? Okay. For that matter, what would your standard of living be if I wasn't able to produce coffee myself? I'm not able to produce coffee myself. I have to get it from somewhere else. So I drink coffee for your protection. So this is why nations trade, or even people trade, because we have things that we need and want. And others are able to provide that. We have a commodity, money, and we bring that to a marketplace, and trade happens. Okay, so who trades in a market economy? Individuals, not nations, trade, but we, for all intents and purposes, we'll also look at nations trading goods and services as well. Engage in trade, providing goods and services to others, and receive goods and services in return. We could take care of all of our needs and our wants ourselves, grow our own food, sew our own clothes. We could provide our own entertainment, even write our own econ book, which you may have a college professor do that. They'll probably have you just buy the book. It's a way for them to gain revenue, and then they force you to buy a book that you may never open. Good luck with that. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this show. I watched the show Alaska, The Last Frontier, the Kilchers. These folks are basically homesteaders, and they grow their own food and their own clothing, and they farm, and they do all the things for themselves. It's an incredibly challenging way of life. Some are intrigued by it. I know my wife would like to be a homesteader. She wouldn't have a clue how to do it, but she would like to. She wants to get a cow. I don't know about getting a cow, but she wants to get a cow. Anyway, we know that living this way would be very difficult, and so we decide to trade. We produce what we produce, and maybe I produce, for example, education, and I gain money from that, and then I'm able to take my money and buy other things that are produced by other people with entrepreneurial spirit who produce goods and services that I need in the product market Gains from trade. The reason we have an economy but not many self-sufficient people is because there are gains to be made from trading, as would make sense. By dividing tasks and trading, people can get more of what they want and need than by being self-sufficient, right? It makes sense. It's a way of, when we trade, it's a way of us demonstrating our level of efficiency rather than I'm going to do everything myself. Unless you can have a TV show and make a lot of money demonstrating that, it makes more sense for you just to do what you do. For me, I'm a teacher, I make money, and then I will go to others and we will engage in commerce and trade, and I will buy and exchange what they produce. This all comes from specialization or efficiency, people engaging in different tasks, offering something to the process of exchange or trade. So you saw this in your book, Gains from Trade. This is the example used in the book, Tom and Hank. You probably know this, right, from the movie Castaway. It's clear from the graphs to the right that Tom is more productive all around than is Hank. So I think my mouse shows here, good. Tom can produce 30 coconuts and 40 units of fish, while Hank can only produce 20 units of coconuts and 10 units of fish. So we would say that Tom has what's called all around or an absolute advantage in coconut and fish production. Even though Hank is less productive at all things, it still makes sense that they would trade. And so the way we figure that out is by determining who has the comparative advantage. The way we determine who has the comparative advantage is by determining who has the lower opportunity cost of producing one product good over another. So we'll refer to this table here to the side. And the way we're going to see this today in our assignment as well, but here's how we do this. We want to figure out essentially who can produce more efficiently one good over another. And I think it's going to show it on the next slide. So let me skip ahead actually. Both of them will be better off with trade, I think is my point here. So comparative advantage, again, which is how we determine who will produce what. And yes, here it shows it down here. So let me scroll through the lecture notes and then I'll come to this interactive portion on the side, which you've already seen in your book, Mod 4. So referring to this example, is it clear that both Tom and Hank are better off when they specialize? Opportunity cost is determined by the slope of the production possibility frontier or the production possibility curve. You may see a C there. And the comparative advantage is determined by who has the lower opportunity cost. So let's pause for a second here and come over to the graphics you saw in your book last night. This is how it works. If we're going to focus on Tom for a second, and we want to focus on Tom producing just coconuts, we say Tom produces, for him to produce 30 coconuts, that is to say, he must give up all production of fish. Again, to produce all coconuts, he gives up all production of fish. That is, so it's going to cost Tom to produce all coconuts, he will lose 40 fish. Or we could say, in terms of one, to produce one coconut, Tom gives up 4/3 fish. So here it is. To produce one coconut, Tom's opportunity cost is 4/3 fish. Again, I say give up because the opportunity cost means opportunity lost. So once again, for Tom to produce 30 coconuts or one coconut, he gives up 4 or 40 over 30, 4/3 fish. For Hank to produce all coconuts, Hank produced 20 coconuts, or he would give up 10 fish. What is 20 coconuts? Or one coconut would be 10 over 20, or 1/2 fish. So for Hank to produce coconuts, it would be 1/2 loss of fish. So who here has the opportunity, lower opportunity cost? We see that Hank has the lower opportunity cost in producing coconuts. That is, he gives up less fish to produce one coconut, where Tom gives up more fish production to produce one coconut. And we do the same thing here for fish production. If Tom is going to produce all fish, he gives up 30 coconuts. So that would be 30 over 40, or 3 over 4. So for Tom to produce one fish, he gives up the production of 3/4 of a coconut. And for Hank to produce all fish, he gives up all coconuts, right? So for Hank to produce 10 fish, he gives up 20 coconuts, production of coconuts, or he gives up 20 over 10, which is 2. He gives up 2 coconuts to produce 1 fish. So here it shows that Tom has a lower opportunity cost than does Hank in the production of fish. So in this case, we would, as I scroll down, I believe it shows it as I circle at the bottom. No, go down here. I've said all this already, so you can pause and take your notes here if you would like. But essentially, Tom has the lower opportunity cost of fish production, so he should produce fish. Gives up less coconut. And Hank has the lower opportunity cost for coconut production because he only gives up a half a fish. So Hank should produce Hank should produce coconuts and Tom should produce fish, and they should both trade. Hence the slope or the opportunity cost that you see here. Don't get too caught up in slope because when we go the other direction, it would not be negative. Just think of opportunity cost. Okay. Comparative advantage, again, is the individual or country has a comparative advantage in producing something if the opportunity cost of that production is lower for the individual country than the other, which is what we saw in the last slide. As long as people have different opportunity costs, which we all technically do, everyone has a comparative advantage in something. And everyone has a comparative disadvantage in something. That is the thing that I'm not relatively more productive or efficient at producing, that I'm going to let you produce, and then we will trade. Again, absolute advantage is outright advantage. We see here that Tom is absolutely better at producing both coconuts and fish. He can produce 30 coconut to 40 fish and 40 fish or 40 fish, where Hank can produce just generally less of both. Okay. Why is Tom trading with Hank at all? It's clear that Tom is actually better at both, as an absolute advantage would suggest. Tom can catch more fish and gather more coconuts, giving him absolute advantage. However, we just saw why Tom and Hank would trade, because of the concept of comparative advantage and finding who has the lower opportunity cost. All that matters is, again, Hank's opportunity cost for the coconut in terms of fish is lower than Tom's, and Tom can use this time better by catching fish. Okay. So again, why nations trade? Considering the tags on your clothes, check them out. Take a pause right now. Look at the tag on your shirt. Most of what we wear is manufactured in other countries, much poorer than ours. If the economies of some third world countries are so much less productive than the United States, I alluded to this at the beginning, how is it that they make so much of our stuff, our clothing in particular? It's because they have a comparative advantage. The opportunity cost for them to produce that is lower than it would be for us, because if we choose to produce t-shirts over technological devices, things that are produced and thought of in Silicon Valley, for example, then that we're giving up more of our resources to produce t-shirts when it would make more sense for us to focus on what we're really good at and let them focus on what they're really good at, t-shirt production, when they can't readily produce things that we can well. There's great difference in the production of sophisticated goods such as aircraft. There's not a great difference in the production of simpler goods such as clothing. So those third world countries do things that are less sophisticated because they're not as advanced, not as industrialized, sophisticated. Example, Bangladesh is an absolute advantage with the US in almost everything. That is wrong. Bangladesh is at an Bangladesh is at an absolute disadvantage. This is correct with the US in almost everything. That is, we could produce t-shirts better and aircraft, computers better. It is a comparative advantage in clothing production though, because they can't really produce sophisticated goods like we can, and we would rather produce sophisticated goods rather than t-shirts. So we each do what we're good at and we trade. There you have it. Now, I'm going to share this screen again, come off of here. I want to share with you, again, this screen. Let's see here, I want to go, I believe this is it. So now, this is the assignment that we would be doing in class. I had you start this up on Wednesday, excuse me. I had you take this information right here and create essentially two productive possibility curves or production possibility frontiers, one for Japan and one for Mexico relative to their production of CDs and pounds of beef. And that production possibility curve, you could do them on separate graphs, or you could do them on one graph. I like to do it on one so that we can keep it together nice and tidy like that. And there we had it. This is what you should have drawn out the other day. And so the questions as we go through are going to be these here. We asked which country has an absolute advantage in producing CDs. And we know that to be Mexico, right? And it shows it here. Mexico can produce 30 to Japan's 20. Which country has an absolute advantage in producing beef? And we know also that would be Mexico, because Mexico can produce 15 units of beef to Japan's 10 units of beef. So Mexico's generally better at producing everything than is Japan. That does not mean, however, they should not trade. So throughout this next bit of this assignment, I would like you to pause, and I would like you to take a few minutes, and based on your information that you have, I'd like you to work out questions. Make that clearer, sorry. I would like you to work out questions 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll go over the key here in just a minute. Actually, I'll just flash the key to shrink this video since we've already talked about it. So go ahead and pause the video now. Okay, now that you're back, I'm going to reveal the answers here. Here at the bottom, I've worked this information out. Smeller, are you good? All right, have a great day. This information here at the bottom shows the calculations of the opportunity cost here for both countries, Mexico and for Japan, okay? And so right here, we see that Mexico, for Mexico to produce all CDs, or to produce 1 CD, they would give up 15 beef. So what is 15 beef to 30 CDs? Well, that is 1/2. So to produce 1 CD, it would require that they would give up 1/2 beef. That's their opportunity cost to produce 1 CD. For Japan to produce 1 CD, it's 1/4 beef, as you can see here. Japan's 20, they give up 5. So what is 5 units of beef to 20 CDs? That's 1/4, okay? So who has the lower opportunity cost to produce 1 CD? Japan does. So Japan should produce CDs. This should tell you right away then who should produce beef as well, and here's the information here. Again, you're going to just simply go to that axis. For example, Mexico can produce 15 units of beef by giving up 30 units of CD. What is 30 units of CD to 15 units of beef? That is 2, and relative to Japan's 4. They have the lower opportunity cost in beef production, so Mexico should produce beef, Japan should produce CDs, and they should trade relatively, okay? The next one I'd like you to work on is this assignment, and actually if you want to take a quick pause to check your answers here, I already went over it, but here are the answers for that one. And now we're going to move, so if you didn't pause, you should pause. Don't be weird, just pause the video so you can check your answers, because we're moving on to the next piece, which would be this one right here. Take a couple of minutes and work through this one. This is called an input method. It's different. So now what we're doing is we're trying to figure out how much time is required to produce 1 unit of each. So in this case, don't get confused, but we want those, when a nation can produce something with less time, that means they're more productive. So it's a reverse of what we were doing before. We don't want to produce less, but we do want to produce things with using less resources, in this case, less time, because that makes us more efficient. So pause the video for a minute and try to work through this after having set up your grid. Okay, now that we're back, this is what it looks like. Okay, first off, input method, how much of a resource is needed, in this case, time, to produce 1 unit of output, okay? So we'll zoom in a little bit right there. Again, you want to use less resources to produce things. In this case, the more we can produce in less time, the more efficient we are. So you're setting up your grid the same way, Japan and Mexico, but this time it's an amount of time, so minutes, or 1 unit takes 3 minutes to produce CD, 12 minutes to produce beef. So you're calculating it the same way, okay? But at the bottom here, I'd like you, again, to remember to, in terms of time to produce 1 unit, the less time, the lower the opportunity cost. Think of it that way. Here at the bottom, the best way we can say it is, here's the best way, way to word the response. That is, in the time it takes Mexico to make 1 CD, they could only produce half a unit of beef. In the time it takes Mexico to produce 1 unit of beef, they could produce 2 CDs. So again, output, which we did first time, versus now an input method activity, they're different, both considering the productivity. So here is what the answers would look like. This assignment right there. Take a minute, pause the video if you're unsure. There you go. And now finally, the last thing I'd like to highlight for you guys, again, you have quiz 1 on Monday. Modules 3 and 4 is what you'll be working on. Please make sure you also, in preparation for that, you've worked the problems in the back of those modules, not just on the XC for 3 and 4, but you've worked the problems. You also, when we're done with the quiz, will have a lecture on module 2. That's the business cycle. So please also do mod 2 for Monday. That would be XC, and also working the problems in preparation for that. Okay, thank you. I hope this helps. Have a great day.